Hi. How many of these people did you know as a Jehovah's Witness? I'm going to read you a list that I compiled during the first year that I was questioning the Watchtower. I was still a witness, but I was in process of reviewing the history. These names are commonly known among Christians, but I didn't know any except one as a Jehovah's Witness. Why didn't we hear about them? So we'll begin. This list is pioneers of home and foreign missions. David Brainerd, who lived from 1718 to 1747, pioneered missionary work among New England and New Jersey Indians before early death from tuberculosis. Inspired by the example of Brainerd and others, William Carey, who lived from 1761 to 1834, used his language facility to open up missionary work in India, translating the Bible or parts of it into 44 local dialects, preparing dictionaries, mission stations, and schools. Despite loss of wife and children to illness, Carey, by means of the press he founded with two other missionaries, made the Bible accessible to 300 million people. Samuel Marsden, who lived from 1764 to 1838, opened the first mission to the cannibalistic Maori of New Zealand. By the time of his death, 24 years later, virtually the entire civilization was Christianized. Henry Martyn, he lived from 1781 to 1812, pioneer missionary in India and Persia, translated the New Testament into Hindustani and Persian, opening up work among the Mohammedans before succumbing to fever and tuberculosis at 31. Adoniram Judson, he lived from 1788 to 1850, spearheaded the spread of Christianity into Burma. Despite great hardships and the loss of his wife and daughter, succeeded in opening up the good news among the Karens, translating the entire Bible into Burmese and working on an English-Burmese dictionary. Determined to take the gospel where it had never been, Allen Francis Gardner lived from 1794 to 1851, became the first missionary to the Zulus, and later the first Protestant missionary to the Indians of Chile, Bolivia, and Terra del Fuego. He and 6 others starved to death while awaiting supplies, stirring up great British interest in South American field. The London Missionary Society sent John William, who lived from 1796 to 1839, to pioneer work in the South Seas. After opening up many bases by the use of ships he built himself, and after translating the New Testament into Rarotongan, Williams was murdered, along with another of the 16 missionaries that had come to join the work. Anthony Ashley Cooper, the 7th Earl of Shaftesbury, Lord Ashley, from 1801 to 1885, probably did more than any other person to alleviate the sufferings of Britain's poor. Child labor, women in mines, inhumane treatment of the insane, the wretched slum conditions of Victorian England, all were eliminated by his influence. After exploring the unopened Oregon Territory and becoming the first pioneer to reach the Pacific by wagon, Marcus Whitman who lived from 1802 to 1847, his wife and another couple developed the mission field among the Indians of the Northwest. The Whitmans were later massacred by the Cayuse tribe. By the time of his death at 93, George Muller, who lived from 1805 to 1898, had preached all over the world for 72 years and built orphanages, caring for and instructing 10,000 children. He left worldly possessions valued at £160. David Livingstone, who lived from 1813 to 1873, opened up the entire interior of Africa, laying the foundation for all subsequent missionary endeavor. After 33 years' labor, the world's most famous missionary and explorer was found dead in the posture of prayer on his knees. He was the only one was familiar with the name when I was a witness. James Curtis Hepburn, 1815 to 1911, brought Western medicine to Japan. He also compiled the first Japanese-English dictionary and the first dictionary of the Bible in Japanese, and helped in translating the Bible. Frederick Wilhelm Baedeker, who lived from 1823 to 1906, took as his life's work the prison camps of Asia, preaching from Germany and Poland to the furthest outpost of Siberia. On one tour, distributed 12,000 Bibles and preached to 40,000 prisoners. Still active till he fell to pneumonia at 83. J.C. Patterson, who lived from 1827 to 1871, took the good news to Melanesia, translating scripture into several languages for the first time. After 20 years, only 40 of the 800 natives on the chief island, Mota, remained unbaptized. Killed on Santa Cruz by natives who mistook him for a slave trader. James Hudson Taylor, who lived from 1832 to 1905, founded the China Inland Mission with his family and 16 other missionaries in 1866. Despite losing his wife and 2 children to cholera in 1870, Taylor persisted. By his death, 35 years later, there were 849 missionaries and 125,000 Chinese Christians associated with the mission. Joseph Damien, usually called Father Damien, who lived from 1840 to 1889, a Belgian missionary to Hawaii, voluntarily chose the leper colony of Molokai as his assignment, or Molokai, I think it's pronounced, was teacher, doctor, nurse, undertaker, head mason, and carpenter-in-chief until his death from leprosy 16 years later. In 1866, James Chalmers, he lived from 1841 to 1901, was sent to Rarotonga, the South Sea Islands, by the London Missionary Society. 10 years there, 20 more in New Guinea, resulted in the founding of several Christian settlements. Invited back to England after the loss of his second wife, he chose to press on to new territory. In 1901, Chalmers, a fellow missionary, and 12 native Christians attempted to befriend the savages of Gori Bari and were massacred, beheaded, and eaten. Undeterred by several brushes with death from fever and dysentery, James Hannington, who lived from 1847 to 1885, determined to open up missionary work in Uganda. He and 50 porters were murdered by the Maasai en route. Ireland's Amy Wilson Carmichael, who lived from 1867 to 1951, performed a distinctive work, rescuing girls destined to a life of servitude and shame in Hindu temples. She later opened a home for children and remained in India the rest of her life, 55 years. Converted to Christianity at 16, Sadhu Sundar Singh, he lived from 1889 to 1929, survived poisoning by his Sikh family to become an itinerant preacher, traveling barefoot through the Punjab, Kashmir, Baluchistan, Afghanistan, and Tibet. It was while pushing back into Tibet again that he disappeared, nothing being known of his last days. The source for this list that I compiled when I was a witness towards the end of my investigation, you'll notice that this list is really concentrating on just prior to Russell and during Russell's lifespan, so contemporaries of Russell. So I listed only 20. There were many more people that could have been listed. I got this from Chambers' Biblical Dictionary, a Biographical Dictionary, Who's Who in Church History, edited by Elgin Moyer, and New International Dictionary of the Christian Church. These names would be familiar to Christians. Why didn't we know anything about them as witnesses? So the next time I'm going to tell you what I actually did with this list, and I wanted to just show you a few books just so you can see. These are not little books, these dictionaries. This is the Chalmers Biographical Dictionary. I don't know if I can, maybe I'm holding it off screen here. There. There's this one, Wycliffe Biographical Dictionary of the Church. Elgin S. Moyer is the editor. The Dictionary of the Christian Church, edited by J.D. Douglas. Another one, also edited by J.D. Douglas, the 20th Century Dictionary of Christian Biography. So you can find these kinds of books where you can get all kinds of information about Christians from all periods of church history. We used this a lot too when we were homeschooling Max, looking at just histories of people. One other thing I was going to say. Oh yeah, I'm going to link to a video we did called Why JW Org Will Fall and the Church Will Stand, Part 7. Why Cults? Separation, Slander, and Doublethink. So the reason for this is this list was, well, I'll tell you that the next time. The second video that I'm going to link is Wilberforce Wheat Weeds, how JW Org, or the Watchtower, ignores God's hand in history and God's workers.